This homeless kid told a millionaire's son, "I can teach you how to ace all your tests." Then she whispered something in his ear, and days later he got straight A's. When the millionaire asked what she had revealed, the boy responded with something that shocked everyone. "Comment what you think will happen and subscribe to my channel to support my work." Dylan Walker's report card trembled in his hands as he walked through the park in front of St. Michael's Academy, the most expensive and prestigious school in Oakwood. At 15, the boy carried the weight of a family that would never accept anything less than perfection. The failing grades seemed to burn his fingers. Algebra 2, D. English Literature, F. American History, D+. Even the B in gym couldn't alleviate the disaster he was about to bring home. He sat on a weathered wooden bench under the shade of a maple tree, hiding his face in his hands. The tears came before he could control them. His father, Harrison Walker, owner of Walker Construction and one of the most respected businessmen in the state, had made it clear that he would no longer tolerate failures. Their last conversation had been brutal. "If you can't succeed even in school, how will you ever take over the family business?" The sound of bare feet on the pavement made him look up. A little girl, no more than 4 years old, approached him with hesitant steps. Her brown hair was disheveled, and her worn clothes, a faded pink t-shirt and thin shorts, contrasted sharply with the impeccable uniforms of the school students passing through the park. "Why are you crying?" she asked in a soft voice, stopping a few feet from the bench. Dylan quickly wiped away his tears, embarrassed to have been caught by a child. "I'm not crying, it's just sweat." The girl tilted her head to the side, as if analyzing something invisible. "My name is Juniper. You're scared of your daddy, aren't you?" The accuracy of the observation made Dylan uncomfortable. "How do you know?" "I know lots of things," she replied, sitting on the edge of the bench without asking permission. "You have a paper in your hand that makes you sad. It's from school, isn't it?" Dylan looked at the crumpled report card in his fingers. It's my report card. My grades are terrible, and my dad's going to kill me when he finds out." Juniper reached out her small hand. "Can I see?" Hesitantly, Dylan handed over the paper. Juniper ran her fingers over the grades, moving her lips silently as if she were reading, although he doubted that a child so small could read properly. "You're not dumb," she said finally, returning the report card. "You just don't know how your head works." "What do you mean by that?" Juniper leaned closer and whispered something in his ear. The words were simple, but they carried a wisdom that seemed impossible for someone her age. She talked about observing patterns, about how people moved and spoke, about how to understand what was behind the teacher's words. "If you do what I said, your grades will improve," she added, returning to sit normally. "How can you be sure?" "Because I've helped other people, and because I see things that adults don't see." At that moment, an elegant woman approached the park. Bethany Walker, 38 years old, Dylan's stepmother, walked towards them with her Italian leather handbag and high heels that echoed on the pavement. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and she wore a navy blue business dress that cost more than many families earned in a month. "Dylan, what are you doing here?" "Your father is waiting for you at home," she said, but stopped abruptly when she noticed Juniper. Her eyes scanned the child from head to toe, and her expression hardened. "And who is this girl?" She's Juniper," Dylan stammered, not knowing how to explain the encounter. Bethany approached, keeping a cautious distance. "Juniper? Where are your parents?" "A child your age shouldn't be alone on the street." "They're not here," Juniper replied simply, without showing fear or embarrassment. "What do you mean they're not here? Where are they?" Juniper shrugged. "I take care of myself." Bethany's discomfort was visible. She grabbed Dylan's arm. "Come on, we need to go home. Your father doesn't like to wait." Dylan stood up reluctantly, but before leaving, he looked at Juniper once more. Will you be here tomorrow?" "If you want me to be," she replied with a small but genuine smile. Bethany pulled Dylan by the arm. pulling him away from the girl. As they walked towards the car, she whispered, "Dylan, that girl looks like she's homeless. You can't just talk to anyone. Imagine if someone sees Harrison Walker's son associating with a beggar." But Dylan barely listened to his stepmother's words. His mind was completely focused on what Juniper had whispered in his ear. It was something about observing the math teacher before class, noticing how he always started by explaining the same way, how he had the habit of repeating the same sequence of gestures. Juniper had said that if he paid attention to these patterns, he could anticipate the questions on the test. During dinner at the Walker Mansion, an imposing colonial-style building in the historic center of Oakwood, Dylan remained silent. Harrison, a 45-year-old man with graying temples and piercing eyes, spoke about the construction company's business while methodically cutting his filet mignon. "The shopping mall project is 2 weeks behind schedule. The engineers can't solve a problem with the foundation," he commented, without looking up from his plate. Bethany tried to keep the conversation going, but she noticed the tension that hung over the table. "Maybe it's time to hire a specialized company, honey." "I don't hire third parties to solve problems that my team should be able to solve," Harrison replied dryly. "Competence is a matter of discipline and dedication." His words carried a weight that Dylan knew well. It was the same demand he received about his studies, the same relentless expectation of perfection. "By the way, Dylan, how was school today?" Harrison asked, finally looking at his son. Dylan felt his stomach clench. The report card was hidden in his backpack in his room, but he knew he wouldn't be able to lie for long. It was normal." "Normal? I received a call from the coordinator. They said the report cards will be out tomorrow. I expect you to have improved your performance." The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Dylan fiddled with his food, without being able to eat, thinking about Juniper's words, about that strange way she seemed to understand things. Part of him wanted to believe that she could really help him, but another part knew that it was impossible. How could a homeless child know something about studies that he didn't? That night, lying in his king-size bed in the spacious room decorated with fine wood furniture, Dylan couldn't sleep. Through the window, he could see the lights of the historic city blinking like earthly stars. He thought of the barefoot girl, of the way she had looked at him without judgment, unlike all the adults in his life. The next morning, he arrived early at school, his heart beating fast. Juniper was there, sitting on the steps of the colonial church next to the park, as if she knew he would come looking for her. "You came back," she said, smiling. I thought about what you told me yesterday. And you're going to try?" Dylan nodded, still not completely believing that he was trusting the advice of a 4-year-old child. But something about her reassured him, a wisdom that seemed impossible for her age. "Today you have a math test," Juniper stated, as if it were an obvious fact. "How do you know that?" "I know lots of things," she repeated, using the same phrase as the day before. "Remember what I taught you? About observing." Dylan spent the whole day at school trying to apply the strange techniques that Juniper had mentioned. He observed the math teacher before class, noticed his repetitive gestures, the way he always wrote in the left corner of the board first. During the test, Juniper's words echoed in his mind, guiding him through the questions in a completely different way than he was used to. When he received the result 3 days later, Dylan could hardly believe what he saw. 95% in math, the highest grade he had ever gotten in his life. His classmates were speechless, and even the teacher made a comment about his surprising improvement. That afternoon, he ran to find Juniper in the park, his heart beating with expectation and gratitude. But when he got there, she wasn't there. He searched the entire park, asked some people, but no one had seen her. A sense of panic began to take over him. What if she didn't come back? What if that had just been luck? When the sun began to set behind the mountains surrounding Oakwood, painting the sky with golden and reddish tones, Dylan finally saw her. Juniper walked down the cobblestone street, coming from the opposite direction, as if she had been somewhere completely different in the city. But the strangest thing was that she seemed to know exactly where he would be waiting for her. The following weeks turned into a secret routine that Dylan guarded as his greatest treasure. Every day after school, he met with Juniper in the park, and with each conversation, his grades continued to improve inexplicably. In English literature, he went from an F to a B+. In American history, he jumped from a D+ to an A. It was as if Juniper possessed a magic key to unlock something in his mind that had always been there, but had never been accessed. "How can you predict the questions on the tests?" Dylan asked one afternoon in April, while watching Juniper draw geometric shapes in the dirt with a stick. "I don't predict the questions," she replied, without looking up from the drawing. "I teach you to understand how the teachers think. The English teacher always asks about the last paragraph of the text you read. The history teacher likes questions about dates that he repeated 3 times in class. It's just observing. But how does a 4-year-old know these things?" Juniper finally looked up, her big, dark eyes fixed on him. "I've been observing people for a long time. When you don't have a home, you need to learn quickly how adults work. You need to know when someone is going to be kind or when they're going to tell you to leave." The answer brought a pang of sadness to Dylan's chest. "Where do you sleep, Juniper?" "In different places. There's a bench behind the church that's warm. Sometimes the owner of the bakery lets me stay in the storage room when it's really cold." She spoke as if it were the most natural thing in the world, without a hint of self-pity. That night, during dinner, Dylan could barely concentrate on his parents' conversation. Harrison commented on a new contract he had closed, but the boy's mind was focused on a 4-year-old girl who slept on park benches while he complained about problems that now seemed insignificant. "Dylan, are you listening to what I'm saying?" Harrison's harsh voice brought him back to reality. "Sorry, Dad. I was thinking about schoolwork." "Great. Because I received the midterm report card today. Your grades have improved drastically." Harrison paused, studying his son's face. 95% in math, B+ in English, A in history. I'm impressed but also curious. What changed? I started studying differently." "How differently?" Dylan felt sweat form on his forehead. "Observing the teachers more, understanding how they explain things." Bethany smiled, clearly relieved. "See, Harrison, I always said Dylan was smart. He just needed the right method." But Harrison didn't seem entirely convinced. His eyes remained fixed on his son for a few seconds more, as if trying to decipher a riddle. "All right, keep it up. But remember, consistency is everything in business and in life." 3 weeks later, while Dylan and Juniper were talking under the maple tree, an elderly woman approached them. It was Mrs. Eleanor Peterson, a retired teacher of 72 years old, known throughout the town for her 40 years dedicated to elementary education. "Excuse me," she said, addressing Juniper directly. "Aren't you the girl who helped Peter, Mrs. Carmen's grandson, with math last year?" Juniper tensed, like an animal ready to flee. "I don't know any Peter." "Of course you do," Mrs. Peterson insisted, squatting down to be at the child's height. "Peter was 8 years old and couldn't understand fractions. Suddenly, he started getting excellent grades. His grandmother told me about a little girl who helped him in the church park." "You must be confusing me," Juniper murmured, getting up from the bench. And before him it was Marina, the baker's daughter, and Roger, the pharmacist's son. Mrs. Peterson's eyes shone with a mixture of admiration and perplexity. "You've been helping children in this town for 2 years, haven't you?" Juniper looked quickly at Dylan as if asking for help, then turned her attention back to the teacher. "I need to go." "Wait," Mrs. Peterson extended her hand gently. "I'm not going to hurt you, dear. I just want to understand how you do it. How does a child your age teach other children so effectively?" "She observes patterns," Dylan said suddenly, surprising both Juniper and Mrs. Peterson. "She understands how people work." Mrs. Peterson was silent for a moment, processing the information. Have you ever had a formal education, Juniper? Have you ever been to school? The girl shook her head negatively. Then how did you learn to read? How do you know about math and other subjects? I listen, Juniper replied simply. I listen to the classes through the windows. I see how the teachers teach. Then, when other children need help, I remember what I heard. The revelation left Mrs. Peterson speechless. You attend schools as a listener, without anyone knowing? The classroom windows are open in the heat. I sit outside and listen. No one sees me. Dylan felt a shiver down his spine. For weeks, he had thought that Juniper possessed some kind of supernatural gift. Discovering that she was simply an extraordinarily observant and determined child made it all the more impressive. My God, whispered Mrs. Peterson, you're a self-taught prodigy, a self-taught child prodigy. At that moment, Bethany appeared in the park, as she occasionally did to pick up Dylan. When she saw the three people talking, her expression hardened. Dylan, what's going on here? She asked, approaching with firm steps. Bethany, this is Mrs. Eleanor Peterson, a former teacher at the academy, Dylan said quickly, trying to avoid a confrontation. Mrs. Peterson, of course, Bethany forced a cordial smile. And you were talking about this extraordinary girl, Mrs. Peterson replied, indicating Juniper. She has an impressive ability to teach other children. Bethany's smile faded. Teach? A 4-year-old? She helped me a lot with my studies, Dylan said, knowing he was treading on dangerous ground. Helped how? Before Dylan could answer, Juniper approached Bethany and said, You're worried because you think I want something from Dylan, but I don't want money or food. I just like to help. The accuracy of the observation made Bethany uncomfortable. That was exactly what she thought, but hearing it from a 4-year-old made her question her own biases. How did you know I was thinking that? Because that's what all adults think when they see a child like me near a family like yours, Juniper replied with a disconcerting maturity. Mrs. Peterson watched the interaction with growing fascination. Bethany, this child possesses extraordinary emotional intelligence. She reads people like open books. And where are her parents? Bethany asked, directing the question directly to Juniper. They're not here, Juniper repeated, using the same vague answer as always. But do they exist? Do you have parents? Juniper hesitated for the first time, as if deciding how much she could reveal. They had to leave, but they'll be back someday. They left and left you alone. That's abandonment. It's not abandonment, Juniper said with surprising firmness. It's protection. The answer created more questions than answers. Bethany looked at Mrs. Peterson, then at Dylan, trying to understand the situation. Protection from what? But Juniper was already walking away, heading towards the street with her silent steps. I need to go. See you tomorrow, Dylan. Wait, Bethany called out, but the girl continued walking until she disappeared among the colonial houses. She always does that, Dylan said, frustrated. When the questions get hard, she leaves. Mrs. Peterson remained thoughtful for a moment. Dylan, how long have you known this girl? About 6 weeks. And your grades improved exactly when you started talking to her? Yes. Mrs. Peterson, Bethany interrupted. What do you know about her? You said she's helped other children. I know at least 3 cases in the last 2 years. Always the same situation. A child with school difficulties suddenly improves dramatically after encounters with this girl. But every time we try to approach her, investigate her situation, she disappears for weeks. Bethany crossed her arms. And the parents of the other children, what did they say? The same thing that you would probably say, that it's impossible for a 4-year-old to have this knowledge, but the results speak for themselves. That night, Bethany told Harrison everything during dinner. The businessman listened in silence, his expression becoming progressively more serious. You're telling me that our son is receiving help from a homeless child who claims to teach math and English? He asked finally. I know how it sounds, but Dylan's grades improved because he started trying harder, not because of a 4-year-old girl. Dylan, who had been silent throughout the conversation, finally spoke. Dad, she really teaches me things that work. What kind of things? How to observe the teachers, how to understand what they consider important, That's not teaching. It's manipulation. Harrison cut in. And I don't want you associating with an abandoned child who may be involved with dangerous people. She's not involved with dangerous people, Dylan protested. How can you be sure? Do you know where she came from? Who her parents are? Why does a 4-year-old live alone on the street? Harrison's questions echoed in Dylan's mind throughout the night. He really didn't know anything about Juniper's past, about her family, about how she had acquired her knowledge. But one thing he was sure of. She had changed his life in a positive way, and that had to mean something. Harrison's ban lasted exactly 3 days. Dylan tried to obey, avoided the park, took alternative routes home, but on the first test after separating from Juniper, his grade plummeted to a D in chemistry. The pattern repeated itself in all subjects. Without the girl's insights into the teacher's behavior, he had returned to his previous performance. I can't stay away from her anymore, he muttered to himself, walking determinedly towards the park on Friday afternoon. He found Juniper sitting on the same bench as always, as if she had never noticed his absence. You came back, she said simply, without reproach in her voice. My dad forbade it. But I need your help. I know. Your grades got worse this week. Dylan stopped mid-motion of sitting down. How can you know that? The report card hasn't even come out yet. Because when you stop observing people the way I taught you, you go back to studying like before, and like before didn't work. Juniper drew a circle in the dirt with her finger. Your parents want you to stop seeing me, don't they? They don't understand. They think you're dangerous. Maybe they're right, Juniper said softly, a shadow passing through her eyes. What do you mean by that? Before she could answer, loud voices echoed from the direction of the street. Harrison walked quickly along the sidewalk, followed by Bethany, both with tense expressions. They had discovered that Dylan had disobeyed. Juniper, hide, Dylan whispered, but when he looked to the side, she had disappeared like smoke. Only the circular drawing in the dirt remained as evidence that she had been there. Dylan Walker! Harrison's voice echoed through the park. Come here immediately! The confrontation that followed was the worst Dylan had ever experienced. Harrison was visibly angry, gesturing while talking about responsibility, obedience, and consequences. Bethany tried to mediate, but her own concern was evident. You disobeyed a direct order, Harrison said when they got home, and because of a child who we don't even know who she is. She has a name, Dad, Juniper. Juniper what? Where did she come from? Who are her parents? Where does she live? Harrison paused dramatically. You can't answer any of those questions because you don't know anything about her. That night, Dylan was grounded in his room, forbidden to leave except to go to school. But his mind was seething with Juniper's words. Maybe they're right. What did she mean? What kind of danger could a 4-year-old pose? On Monday, during the school break, Dylan looked for Mrs. Eleanor Peterson in the municipal library, where she volunteered cataloguing old books. Mrs. Peterson, I need help, he said, approaching the table where she was organizing cards. Dylan, good to see you. How are your studies? Actually, that's what I want to talk about. It's about Juniper. Mrs. Peterson's face lit up with interest. Ah, the extraordinary girl. Have you been able to find out anything about her? No. My parents forbade me to see her. But I need to understand who she is, where she came from. Dylan sat in the chair opposite the teacher. You said she helped other children. Can you tell me more about that? Mrs. Peterson put the cards aside and focused completely on him. Well, it started about 2 years ago. Peter, Mrs. Carmen's grandson, was having terrible difficulties in math. The family had already hired 2 tutors without success. Then suddenly his grades improved dramatically. And you found out it was because of Juniper. Not immediately. Peter was a shy child, didn't talk much about his friends. It was only when his grandmother saw him talking to a little girl in the park that she started asking questions. Mrs. Peterson paused, remembering the details. When they tried to approach the girl to thank her, she disappeared. Peter was devastated, cried for days. And then, 6 months later, it was Marina, the baker's daughter. Same situation, difficulties in English, bad grades, until she started talking to a little girl in the park. In 3 weeks, she was among the best students in the class. Dylan felt a mixture of fascination and unease, and no one ever managed to talk to her properly. "I tried once," Mrs. Peterson said, lowering her voice. "It was a year ago. I waited in the park for a whole week until I saw her again. When she finally appeared, I tried to talk to her, offer help, a place to stay. She listened to me patiently, then said something I'll never forget." "What did she say?" "She said she appreciated my kindness, but that there were people looking for her, people who didn't want her well, and that if she stayed too long in the same place, they might find her." A shiver ran down Dylan's spine. "What people?" "I don't know." She didn't want to explain. But there was fear in her eyes, Dylan. Real fear from a child who had seen things she shouldn't have seen. That afternoon, defying his parents' orders, Dylan went directly to the park after school. Juniper wasn't there. He waited 2 hours, asked local merchants, but no one had seen her. On Monday, she didn't show up. On Tuesday either. On Wednesday, Dylan began to panic. That's when he decided to look in the places she had mentioned. First, he went behind the church, where she said she sometimes slept. He found no sign of her, but asked the priest about little girls asking for shelter. "Ah, yes," said Father Michael, a gentleman of 60 years. "Juniper. She's been appearing here for almost 2 years. Always polite, never asks for anything directly, but accepts a plate of food when I offer it." "Father, do you know anything about her family?" "Very little. Once I asked about her parents, and she said they had to stay away for a while. When I insisted, she told me something strange." "What?" "She said her parents were very intelligent people who knew things that other people wanted to know, and that's why they had to hide." "Do you believe her?" Father Michael reflected for a moment. "Dylan, in 40 years of priesthood, I've learned to recognize when a child is lying. Juniper never lies. She may not tell the whole truth, but she doesn't make up stories." The next day, Dylan visited the bakery where Juniper sometimes took refuge. The owner, a robust woman named Carol, confirmed the story. "Poor thing," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "She appears here every now and then, always very polite. Once it was raining a lot. I let her sleep in the storage room. In the morning, she had organized all the flower boxes in alphabetical order and calculated exactly how much product I had in stock. Calculated how? Counted everything in her head and wrote the numbers on a piece of paper. When I checked it on the computer later, everything was correct, down to the last pound of sugar. A 4-year-old did that. That's what I'm telling you. That girl isn't normal. Not normal in the best possible way." That night, during dinner, Dylan could no longer keep his investigations secret. He told his parents everything he had discovered, the other children that Juniper had helped, the comments from the priest and the bakery owner, the girl's extraordinary calculation ability. "So you disobeyed me again," Harrison said, but his voice didn't carry the expected anger. There was something else, a curiosity that he was trying to hide. "Dad, she's not an ordinary child. There's something special about her." "Special how?" Bethany asked. "She understands people in a way I've never seen. She can predict how they're going to act. She knows things that a 4-year-old shouldn't know." Harrison exchanged a meaningful look with Bethany. "Dylan, you said she mentioned that her parents had to hide." "That's what the priest told me." "Hide from whom?" "I don't know. She never wanted to talk about it." Harrison got up from the table and began to walk around the room, as he did when he was processing important business information. "A child with exceptional cognitive abilities, whose parents mysteriously disappeared 2 years ago, and she shows fear of being found by certain people. What are you thinking? Bethany asked. I'm thinking that maybe we need to understand this situation better before simply forbidding Dylan from seeing the girl. Harrison stopped walking and looked directly at his son. But if we're going to do that, we'll do it right. I want to meet this Juniper personally. You want to meet her? Dylan asked, surprised. I want to understand how a 4-year-old can teach math and English to teenagers. And mainly, I want to know why she's alone on the street. It was then that Bethany asked the question that would change everything. Harrison, don't you think it's strange that she appeared in town exactly at the time when you were having those problems with the competing company? That industrial espionage story? Harrison stopped completely. The case Bethany was referring to had happened 2 years ago when he discovered that a rival company was trying to steal projects from the construction company using questionable methods. The investigation had revealed attempts to lure employees and even office break-ins. You're suggesting there's a connection? I'm suggesting that a child prodigy whose very intelligent parents mysteriously disappeared at the same time our town had corporate espionage problems can't be a coincidence. The revelation left everyone silent. If Bethany was right, Juniper wasn't just an extraordinarily intelligent child lost on the street. She could be the daughter of people who possessed information valuable enough for someone to want to keep them silent. The search for Juniper intensified when Harrison decided to use his business resources to investigate the girl's disappearance. For an entire week, she didn't appear in the park, near the church, or in any of her known locations. Dylan was desperate. His grades plummeted again, and a sense of emptiness took over him. She's never disappeared for this long, he told Mrs. Peterson during a visit to the library. What if something happened to her? Have patience, Dylan. Juniper is a survivor. She's learned to protect herself. But the retired teacher's tranquility was shaken when, on the 8th day of the girl's absence, a discovery completely changed the course of the investigation. Harrison had hired a private investigator to search records of families who had moved to Oakwood in the last 2 years, and the result was surprising. I found something, he said during dinner, spreading documents on the table. A family registered with the City Hall exactly 2 years ago, Gabriel and Letitia Hawthorne, both researchers in neuroscience, with a 2-year-old daughter named Juniper. Bethany leaned over the papers. Where are they now? Here's the interesting thing. They registered as new residents, rented a small house in the Rosewood neighborhood, but after only 3 weeks, they disappeared without a trace. They didn't cancel the lease, they didn't take the furniture, they simply vanished. As if they had fled something, Dylan murmured. Exactly. And there's more. Harrison picked up another document. Gabriel Hawthorne had worked in a cognitive neuroscience lab in Austin, specializing in studying children with exceptional intellectual abilities. Letitia was a child psychologist, also specializing in giftedness. The information fell like a bomb on the family. Juniper wasn't just a street child with unusual abilities. She was the daughter of scientists who studied exactly the type of ability she demonstrated. Does that mean she was studied by her own parents? Bethany asked, horrified. Or that they discovered something about her abilities that forced them to flee? Harrison replied. That night, Dylan couldn't sleep. He kept imagining Juniper, a child so small, being subjected to tests and experiments by her own parents. Or worse, being chased by people who wanted to exploit her abilities. The next morning, he decided to make one last attempt to find her. He left home early and went directly to the municipal library, where he had heard that she sometimes went to listen to children's stories that were read aloud during the mornings. There she was, sitting discreetly in the back of the room, listening attentively while a librarian read The Little Prince to a group of young children. When the story ended and the other children left, Dylan approached. "Juniper," he whispered, "I've been looking for you. Where have you been?" She looked at him with a different expression, more mature, more tired. "I knew you were asking questions about me. My parents want to help you." "No one can help me, Dylan, not the way you think." "Why not? We found out about your parents, about their work. We know you've been alone for 2 years. Juniper's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly contained them. "You don't understand. If the wrong people find out where I am, my parents will be in danger." "What people? What are you talking about?" Juniper looked around, making sure they were alone in the library. "My parents discovered something about me, something that other people wanted to use for bad things." "Like what?" "I don't just observe patterns in people. I can predict things, how people will react, what decisions they will make, and there are people who want to use that to make money, to hurt others." The revelation left Dylan speechless. "You can really predict the future." "It's not exactly like that. It's more like when you completely understand how a person works, you can know what they will do in most situations. And I can understand people very quickly." "That's why you knew about the tests, about the teachers." "Yes, but it's also why bad people want to find me." At that moment, Mrs. Peterson appeared among the bookshelves, clearly looking for them. "Juniper, I'm so glad you're back. We were worried." "Mrs. Peterson," Dylan said. "She was telling me about why her parents fled." Mrs. Peterson approached and sat next to them. "Juniper, dear, you can trust us. We want to help you and your family. Do you know what happened 2 years ago in the city? That company that was trying to steal secrets from other companies? Of course, it was a scandal at the time. Several local businesses were affected. They weren't just stealing business secrets. They were looking for special people. People like me." Mrs. Peterson's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" "They found out about me through my parents' work. They wanted to take me to do bad things with my abilities. My parents fled with me, but then decided I would be safer alone, mixed in with other street children than with them." "Juniper," Dylan said, holding the girl's hand. "You don't have to be alone anymore. My family can protect you." "You can't," she shook her head sadly. "Your father is a businessman. If those people find out he's hiding me, they can harm his company, his family." At that moment, familiar voices echoed through the library. Harrison and Bethany had arrived, clearly looking for Dylan. "There they are," Bethany said, pointing to the group in the back of the library. As they approached, Juniper visibly flinched, but didn't run away as she had before. "Juniper," Harrison said, crouching down to be at her level. "My name is Harrison. I know you know my son." "I know who you are," she replied softly. "We want to help you. We know about your parents, about what happened 2 years ago. You can't help me without putting yourself at risk." Harrison exchanged a look with Bethany before continuing. "Juniper, I'm an experienced businessman. Dealing with risks is part of my job. And mainly, I believe that every child deserves to be safe and with their family. My parents are fine. They're safe where they are." "Where are they?" Bethany asked gently. Juniper hesitated for a long moment. "In Asheville. They work at the municipal library under false names. They can't see me because the bad people are still looking for our family." "Asheville is only a 2-hour drive from here," said Mrs. Peterson. "Juniper, how long has it been since you saw your parents?" 7 months, she murmured, and finally the tears she had been holding back began to run down her face. The confession broke the hearts of everyone present. A 4-year-old girl had spent 7 months without seeing her parents to protect them. "Listen," said Harrison, making a decision that would change everything. "I'm going to make you a proposition. How about I go to Asheville, talk to your parents, and bring them here for a meeting? In a safe place, just the 5 of us. We can find a solution together." "You would do that?" "I would. But I need you to trust me completely. I need to know everything. Your parents' false names, where they work, how I can find them." Juniper looked at Dylan, then at Mrs. Peterson, as if seeking confirmation that she could trust them. "Their names are Michael and Anna now." They work at the Asheville Public Library. He organizes the old archives. She takes care of the children's section. She paused, wiping away her tears. But if you go there, you have to promise me one thing. What? If they say it's dangerous to help me, you'll leave and never look for me again. Harrison took Juniper's small hand in his. I promise, but I have a feeling your parents will want to see you again very much. 3 days later, Harrison returned from Asheville with news that no one expected. Gabriel and Letitia Hawthorne, living as Michael and Anna, not only accepted the meeting, but revealed that they had been observing the Walker family discreetly for months, impressed with the kindness they had shown towards their daughter. They want to see you, Juniper, Harrison said, smiling, and they have a proposal that can solve everything. The reunion took place at the Walker's house on a golden June afternoon. When Juniper saw her parents for the first time in 7 months, she ran into their arms as if she were flying. Gabriel and Letitia cried openly, holding their daughter as if they would never let her go. We're so sorry, Gabriel said to the Walker family. Juniper told us how you took care of her, how you treated her with kindness. We don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank us, Bethany replied. She took care of us too, especially Dylan. It was then that Letitia revealed the last secret. The company that was chasing us went bankrupt 3 months ago. Investigations revealed other irregularities, and all those involved were arrested or fled the country. We are free to return to our normal life. Does that mean you can be together? Dylan asked. It means we can start over, Gabriel said. And we hope we can do it here, near the family that saved our daughter. Juniper looked at Dylan with that small but genuine smile that he had learned to love. Now I can teach you everything I know without hiding. Actually, Dylan said, smiling back, I think you've already taught me the most important thing. What was it? That sometimes the most special people appear when we least expect them, and that it's worth trusting them, even when we don't completely understand who they are. 6 months later, the Hawthorne family had settled permanently in Oakwood. Gabriel returned to work in research, but now focused on developing teaching methods for gifted children. Letitia opened a child psychology practice, and Juniper, finally attending school regularly, continued to help other children with learning difficulties, now with the full support of her family. Dylan maintained his high grades, no longer dependent on Juniper's insights, but carrying with him the most valuable lessons, the importance of observation, of empathy, and especially of the courage to help someone in need, even when the whole world says it's impossible. The friendship between them turned into a siblinghood that would last forever, proving that the strongest bonds are those forged not in blood, but in mutual understanding and unconditional love. If you enjoyed this wonderful story, please comment. Your opinion is very important, and if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.